Prime Minister Narendra Modi has left for the United States of America ahead of a jam-packed three-day tour till 25th of September. Before taking the Air India One, the Prime Minister released an official statement over the crucial engagements. He said that he, along with the US President Joe Biden, will review India-US strategic ties. Prime Minister also added that he's looking forward to meeting Vice President Kamala Harris to discuss global issues and explore ideas for cooperation. What happens after that? On 24th of September, Prime Minister will also attend the first in-person Quad Summit, and that will be along with US President Joe Biden, Australian Prime Minister Scott Morrison and Japan Prime Minister Yoshihide Suga. Modi will then conclude this visit after he addresses the United Nations General Assembly. That will be in New York City on 25th of September. And on the top agendas will be pandemic fight and climate change. But apart from the vaccine cooperation and security focus, remember, all of this is happening in the background of Afghanistan now being ruled by the Taliban. It's also likely to get a top agenda on the discussion.
The stage is set for NaMoste America. Prime Minister Narendra Modi's three-day visit to the United States is significant on many counts.
ये जो दृश्य है, ये अकल्पनीय है.
He will be attending the first in-person meeting of the Quad leaders.
Now, Prime Minister Modi, I'm kicking it over to you. And again, it's great to see you.
His biggest foreign trip since the COVID pandemic will also be his first to the US after President Joe Biden took charge. Prime Minister Modi has a packed itinerary in the US. He reaches Washington, D.C. late night on Wednesday. The next morning, he will meet Apple chief Tim Cook. But the highlight of the day would be his meeting with Vice President Kamala Harris.
I, Kamala Devi Harris, do solemnly swear
that I will support.
Remember, Prime Minister Modi had congratulated Harris on becoming the first woman US Vice President, calling her election a historic occasion.
Foreign and domestic.
Against all enemies, foreign and domestic.
Modi will be holding bilateral meets with its Australian and Japanese counterparts, Scott Morrison and Yoshihide Suga, and the trio will be hosted by Biden for a dinner. On Friday, Modi and Biden will hold a bilateral meet at the White House.
One of the highlights of the visit is the Prime Minister's meeting with the US President, President Joe Biden in the White House. You are undoubtedly aware that this would be the Prime Minister's first in-person meeting with President Biden.
Both the leaders have met thrice virtually. The Quad Summit in March, the Climate Change Summit in April, and the G7 Summit this year. Prime Minister Modi will then be attending the Quad Leaders Summit at the White House. The grouping of four, the United States, India, Australia and Japan, is designed as a counter to China in a bid to secure the Asia-Pacific region.
We'll do so with our allies and partners through cooperation at multilateral institutions like the United Nations to amplify our collective strength and speed our progress toward dealing with these global challenges.
After a series of hectic meetings, Prime Minister Modi will travel to New York to address the UN General Assembly on Saturday. The key focus will be the situation in Afghanistan and Pakistan's continuous patronage to terrorism. Prime Minister Modi has already spelt out India's stand on the new Taliban administration at the Shanghai Cooperation Organization Summit last week.
अफगानिस्तान में सत्ता परिवर्तन इंक्लूसिव नहीं है और बिना नेगोशिएशन के हुआ है. इससे नई व्यवस्था की स्वीकार्यता पर सवाल उठते हैं.
The meetings on the highest global stage signal a new world order. US President Joe Biden has announced an end to relentless wars and a beginning of relentless diplomacy. Emerging from a COVID pandemic, the biggest humanitarian crisis in 100 years, the world has new challenges ahead. With Geeta Mohan, Bureau Report, India Today.
Of the most diverse and welcome welcoming city in the United States.
And over now to my colleague Akshita Nandagopal to help you understand what precisely is on the agenda and why is this such a crucial visit between the four nations.
And let's get you details of what the Prime Minister's visit to America looked like. What are the meetings lined up? The most important, on September 24th, is the bilateral meeting with US President Joe Biden. The first such meeting that's happened since Biden has taken oath as the US President. Also, what's important is that on September 24th is when the Quad Summit will be happening. They've met virtually a number of times, but the world leaders will be coming together for the first in-person Quad Summit. The next day, on September 25th, Prime Minister Modi heads to New York, where he'll be part of the United Nations General Assembly. He'll be addressing the UNGA as well. So in that context, what's on the agenda? The Prime Minister will be focusing on a number of issues. The vaccine initiative, globally ensuring equal distribution of vaccines. Climate change is something that India stressed on time and again on the global platform. The Prime Minister is expected to touch upon that. Education is another aspect, especially amid a pandemic. How education has changed in these times is something we will focus on. Emerging technologies is another point that's on the agenda. Connectivity, infrastructure, how different countries can come together to boost infrastructure is another aspect that we'll touch upon. Cybersecurity is another point that India has time and again spoken about on a global platform. That too will be brought up. And along with that will be maritime security, the role of allies, neighbors in coming together in ensuring that our borders, our seas are also secure. Disaster relief, disaster assistance, helping countries in times of need is something also that's on the agenda when the Prime Minister heads to the United States and speaks at the UNGA as well as at the Quad.
So while there are many agendas on this visit, but remember all of this in the shadow of the rise of Taliban. The Afghanistan crisis is likely to dominate Modi's discussion in the United States. And remember, Prime Minister Modi was the only leader to have called out the Taliban government and even warning the world of its terror threat.
The unforgettable American pullout. The blood-drenched aftermath. And the rise of Afghanistan's godfathers of terror. And while the rest of the world tiptoed around the new rulers of a collapsed country, only one leader found it fit to point out a finger directly at the Taliban.
अफगानिस्तान में सत्ता परिवर्तन इंक्लूसिव नहीं है और बिना नेगोशिएशन के हुआ है। इससे नई व्यवस्था की स्वीकार्यता पर सवाल उठते हैं।
It is in the echo of those words that the Indian Prime Minister begins his crucial United States visit that kicks off with the first in-person Quad Summit. It is in the shadow of the Taliban's rise and its overwhelming implications for regional security that Modi now confabulates with the superpower that dropped Afghanistan like a hot potato and breaks bread with President Joe Biden for the first time. Modi and Biden have met virtually on at least 3 occasions: the Quad Virtual Summit in March, the Climate Change Summit in April, and the G7 Summit in June this year. But the Taliban's lightning power grab in Afghanistan has set the overwhelming tone for Modi's visit. The US pullout, a move that has jeopardized India's strategic interests in Afghanistan, will get top billing in discussions. Though the Indian security establishment is clear that America has tried to wash its hands, China's shadow in Afghanistan ensures the United States cannot ever walk away completely. As the United States itself now breaks bread with the very Taliban it once hunted, navigating the dynamics of regional security will be Modi's biggest challenge. From Washington, Modi will travel to New York to address the general debate of the 76th session of the United Nations General Assembly on September 25th in New York. Here too, India's focus will remain the situation in Afghanistan and terrorism emanating from Pakistan. Multiple intelligence alerts have told India that the Al-Qaeda, ISIS Khorasan and other groups could be diverted to escalate violence in Kashmir. On this issue too, the Prime Minister has cleared decks on India's stand at the SCO summit.
अफगानिस्तान में हाल के घटनाक्रम का सबसे अधिक प्रभाव हम जैसे पड़ोसी देशों पर होगा। हमें मिलकर सुनिश्चित करना चाहिए कि अफगानिस्तान की धरती का उपयोग किसी भी देश में आतंकवाद फैलाने के लिए न हो।
While Pakistan, the emboldened new stakeholder in Afghanistan, is likely to attempt to derail all conversations at the UN again by raising Kashmir at the UN, India will remain focused on the issue of terrorism, regional security and Afghanistan. While the Quad nations will also center around the Afghanistan issue and the Chinese threat, all eyes will be on how Modi and Biden decide to work together as allies in a world that just became much more dangerous. With Geeta Mohan in Washington, D.C., Bureau Report, India Today.
And amid growing tensions already with China, US President Joe Biden has declared that US is not seeking a new Cold War. Addressing the United Nations General Assembly, Biden has said America will start an era of relentless diplomacy after its withdrawal from Afghanistan.
To the United Nations,
U.S. President Joe Biden mapped out a new era of vigorous competition without war in his first United Nations address on Tuesday, a steep departure from the America First policies of his predecessor, Donald Trump.
We will lead on all the greatest challenges of our time, from COVID to climate, peace and security, human dignity and human rights, but we will not go it alone. We will lead together with our allies and partners and in cooperation with all those who believe as we do that this is within our power to meet these challenges.
Biden said he will work to double the United States' financial commitment on climate change and spend $10 billion to fight hunger. While he didn't address China directly, Biden made implicit references to Beijing as the U.S. butts heads with China over trade and human rights issues. He said the United States will compete vigorously, economically, and push democratic systems and rule of law.
We'll stand up for our allies and our friends and oppose attempts by stronger countries to dominate weaker ones, whether through changes to territory by force, economic coercion, technical exploitation, or disinformation. But we're not seeking, say it again, we are not seeking a new Cold War or a world divided into rigid blocs.
Biden came to the United Nations facing criticism at home and abroad for a hasty U.S. withdrawal from Afghanistan that left some Americans and Afghan allies still in that country and struggling to get out. His vow for allied unity is being tested by a three-way agreement between the United States, Australia, and Britain that undermined a French submarine deal and left France feeling stabbed in the back.